Vicious Rumors is an American power metal band, originally formed in 1979 in the San Francisco, California Bay Area. The band was conceived by founder and guitarist-vocalist Geoff Thorpe, and the band has been actively recording and touring worldwide since their full-length recording debut in 1985. The band is signed to Germany-based label SPV Steamhammer Records. Biography Formation and full-length debut. Soldiers of the Night. Guitarist and composer Thorpe began his musical career as a teenager in Honolulu, Hawaii. Thorpe had set out to start forming the band in the San Francisco Bay Area during the summer of 1979. Other Bay Area-based bands like Exodus, Anvil Chorus, Metallica was originally from LA, but everyone considered them a Bay Area band after they moved to the Bay to play with Cliff Burton, and Death Angel were also starting out during that era. These bands were playing the same local venues and establishing the Bay Area thrash metal scene Euro, which in a few years would become very popular worldwide. While working towards a stable lineup, early incarnations of Vicious Rumors played live extensively within California's Bay Area between 1980 and 1985. Their first studio recordings appeared on compilations such as KMEL's New Oasis and US Metal Vol. 3 and 4 in 1982, 1983 and 1984. These recordings helped the band obtain their first record deal with the legendary Shrapnel Records. The band's first full-length album Soldiers of the Night was released in 1985, and it quickly began to establish VR's worldwide reputation. This release is classed as a milestone and a classic in power metal. The lineup at the time included a young guitarist named Vinnie Moore. The classic era, from Digital Dictator to Word of Mouth. 1987 saw vocalist Carl Albert and guitarist Mark McGee replace St. Pierre and Moore respectively prior to the recording of the band's second album, Digital Dictator. This release with Shrapnel Records helped define Vicious Rumors' classic US power metal sound. Digital Dictator was the year's #1 album in one of Europe's top metal magazines, Rock Hard. The album sold well in Japan, the US, and the rest of Europe. Vicious Rumors became an international live act at this point. They were invited to appear at the Dutch Aardschok Festival, the Dynamo Open Air Festival, and at live festivals with Death Angel and Forbidden. An increase in popularity began to generate interest in the band from major record labels, and in 1989 they signed a deal with the legendary major label Atlantic Records, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC. Their first Atlantic release was the self-titled Vicious Rumors in 1990. The band subsequently began their first full US tour Euro, which lasted for over 3 months and shot their first official video, Don't Wait for Me, directed by Gore Verbinski. This tour was quickly placed in rotation on MTV's Headbangers Ball. 1991 saw the release of Vicious Rumors' fourth album, Welcome to the Ball. This recording received Bay Area Music Awards nominations for Best New Metal Album, and Outstanding Metal Album. Their second MTV video, Children, went beyond the exposure normally limited to metal bands on Headbangers Ball. It received regular daytime airplay. The band finished the year with a 1-month European tour Euro with Savatage Euro, and 4 months' worth of live US performance dates. After a 1992 tour with label mates Savatage and the release of the live album Plug-In and Hang On, Live in Tokyo, guitarist Thorpe was diagnosed with carpal tunnel syndrome. He was forced to undergo surgery. During the year-long hiatus for Vicious Rumors, the band parted company with both Atlantic Records and bassist Dave Starr. After Thorpe recovered, new bass player Tommy Sisko was recruited. The band's sixth album, 1994's Word of Mouth, was recorded and released on the Rising Sun label. The CD included the song Thunder and Rain, which was dedicated to the memory of Chris Oliva of Savatage. Sales of Word of Mouth were strong, the reception was positive, and the band resumed touring to support the release. Vicious Rumors was now becoming increasingly popular in Europe. They were invited back to the Dynamo Open Air Festival in the Netherlands. They also joined forces with Accept for several summer festival dates. The band returned to Europe later that year for more live shows, this time with Metal Church, Zodiac Mindwhip and The Love Reaction, and Paul Di'Anno's Killers. Life after the death of Carl Albert, subsequent releases. After returning from a European tour with Zarvatage, singer Carl Albert was killed in a California Bay Area car accident on April 22, 1995. Around the same time, Mark McGee left the band. Steve Smith was recruited as his replacement. Upon Albert's death, the band released a tribute to Carl Albert, and their first home video The First 10 Years. Additionally, Mark McGee composed and recorded the song Find Your Way Home for one of his solo projects and dedicated it to the memory of Albert. The band decided not to replace Albert at that time, and Thorpe assumed the role of vocalist for the band's next album, Something Burning. This album was released in 1996 on the Massacre Records label. The song Perpetual, included on the album, was the last track written with Albert. The resulting reviews of the new release were favorable, and Via subsequently undertook a European tour with Accept to support it. Cybertrist, their next studio album, was recorded and released in 1998 with newcomer Brian O'Connor on vocals. The band was invited by Blind Guardian to join them for 30 tour dates on their highly successful Nightfall and Middle-earth European tour. The band then took some time off from touring and recording primarily to recruit new personnel. They recruited a new bass player, Cornbread, who replaced Tommy Sisko, and Ira Black filled the spot left by departing guitarist Smith. Session players At Maina, Dan Lawson and Will Carroll briefly sat in for drummer Larry Odway, who at the time wanted to take some time off from touring and recording. The new lineup recorded and released Sadistic Symphony with vocalist Morgan Thorne in 2001, but O'Connor rejoined the band for live dates in the US and Europe in support of the new album. There were no new releases by Vicious Rumours in 2002 or 2003. During this period, band leader Thorpe was asked by longtime friend Daniel Jones of rock and roll band Seventh Order to take part in recording sessions, alongside veteran British guitarist Martin Pugh and drummer Tim Kelleher, for their The Lake of Memory album. Several tracks prominently featured Thorpe, and the album enjoyed a great deal of worldwide radio airplay. Returned to a traditional sound. In 2004, in order to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the band's word-of-mouth release, there were several live reunions of the 1994 Vicious Rumours lineup. 2005 saw the release of the band's Crashing the World DVD, which featured both current and historical Vicious Rumours lineups, and included several previously unreleased tracks, Poveglia, Broken Wings, Fight, and Immortal. The album Warball was recorded and released on the Mascot Records label in early 2006. Members Cornbread and O'Connor left the band prior to its recording, but original drummer Larry Howe and bassist Dave Starr had returned. Vocalist James Rivera and guitarists Brad Gillis and Thane Rasmussen contributed to the recordings of the new album. Worldwide sales were excellent and reviewers universally saw the Warball album as a genuine return to form of a more traditional Vicious Rumours sound after the more experimental releases of the post-Carl Albert incarnations of the band. Stephen Goodwin stepped in to serve as Vicious Rumours' touring bassist, and the band played several dates in Europe, including shows with Agent Steel, Hammerfall, Girl School, Nazareth, and Heaven and Hell. Upon the band's return to the US, Ronnie Shiggs took over as an interim replacement for the departing Rivera. Rasmussen was replaced by Kiyoshi Morgan as second guitarist. Shiggs was eventually replaced by Brian Allen. In 2009, Thorpe and Howe acknowledged the 30th anniversary of the inception of Vicious Rumours by performing songs from their debut album Soldiers of the Night with former singer Gary St. Pierre at the Headbangers Open Air Festival. In 2011, Mark McGee, Tommy Sisko and Kevin Alberti, the son of late vocalist Carl Alberti, sat in with the band for their performance at the Keep It True festival, also in Germany. The band was now signed to SPV Records, and their 10th album Razorback Killers was released on March 28, 2011. Several guests joined them for the sessions, Mark McGee, Brad Gillis, and Testament guitarist Eric Peterson. The album also marked the recording debuts of Goodwin, Morgan and Allen. The band then departed for an extensive European summer tour, headlining 60 shows and supporting Hammerfall on 30 shows. In early 2012, The band took part in the first ever infamous heavy metal sea cruise, 70,000 tons of metal. In late 2012, after a series of summer festival performances in Europe with new entry Bob Kapka on second guitar, the band released a live album, recorded on tour with Hammerfall in 2011, engineered by Pontus Norgren, titled Live You to Death in November 2012. European blood in the band and recent events. A new studio album, Electric Punishment, was recorded and released on the SPV label in 2013. For their subsequent European tour, James Rivera returned temporarily to replace vocalist Alan. Slovenian instrumentalist Alan Hudrap took over for the departing Stephen Goodwin on bass and became the first ever European member of Vicious Rumours. Thane Rasmussen and Bob Kapka alternated in the second guitar role and Brian Allen still on vocals. The band had played more than 70 shows in 2013, including several metal festivals Euro, and a pre-show performance for the Bang Your Head event in Germany again featured a special guest appearance by Kevin Albert. For the band's American tour, Dutch singer Nick Holman took over as vocalist. The band continued touring into 2014, again playing with 70,000 tons of metal crew Euro as well as several big European summer festivals and numerous live club dates. A live album titled Live You to Death 2, American Punishment was released in June 2014, the first official release by the new VIA lineup, consisting of Thorpe, Howe, Kapka, and European members Hudrap and Holman. According to the band's website, their first ever live dates for South America have been scheduled in December 2014. The band will play in Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Rio Negro, Buenos Aires, Curitiba etc. An extensive pre-production for the new Vicious Rumours studio album started in late 2014/early 2015. The new studio album, to be released via SPV Steamhammer Records, is planned for late 2015/early 2016. Band members: Geoff Thorpe Euro guitar, vocals, Larry Howe Euro drums, Bob Kapka Euro guitar, Alan Hudrap Euro bass, Nick Holman Euro. Former members: session and live musicians, Walt Perkins, drums Mark Tate, vocals Jim Casero, guitars Jeff Barnacle, bass Jamie Scott, guitars Jim Lang, drums Chuck Momi, guitars Don Seltzer, drums Gary St. Pierre, vocals Dave Starr, bass Vinnie Moore, guitars Terry Montana, guitars Mark McGee, guitars Carl Albert, vocals Tommy Sisko, bass Steve Smith, guitars Brian O'Connor, vocals Morgan Thorne, vocals Adma Aina, drums Ira Black, guitars Cornbread, bass Dan Lawson, drums Will Carroll, drums James Rivera, vocals Brad Gillis, guitars Ronnie Shiggs, vocals Kevin Albert, vocals Kiyoshi Morgan, guitars Stephen Goodwin, bass Brian Allen, vocals Thane Rasmussen, guitars. Official releases. Discography. Studio albums, 1985, Soldiers of the Night, 1988, Digital Dictator, 1990, Vicious Rumours, 1992, Welcome to the Ball, 1994, Word of Mouth, 1996, Something Burning, 1998, Cybertrist, 2001, Sadistic Symphony, 2006, Warball, 2011, Razorback Killers, 2013, Electric Punishment. Live albums, 1992, Plug-in and Hang Ontario, 1995, A Tribute to Carl Albert, 2012, Live You to Death, 2014, Live You to Death 2, American Punishment. EPs, 1994, The Voice. Early studio tracks on compilations. 1982 I Can Live Forever KMEL compilation New Oasis, 1983 Ultimate Death US Metal Vol. 3, 1984 One Way Ticket US Metal Vol. 4. Videography, 1996, The First 10 Years, 2005, VR, Crashing the World. References. External links, official website, Rock Detector's Vicious Rumours biography, The Rocket Scientists' Vicious Rumours Geoff Thorpe and Armageddon Steamhammer's Martin Pugh sitting on Seventh Order Sessions, Vicious Rumours South American Tour. Vicious Rumours in Argentina, December 2014.